Good morning. 7 o'clock here. Don't know what time it is in your part of the world, but I'm having a good day. No bad days. I'm having a good day because at 11 o'clock today, I've got my friend Louis Shelton. Finally convinced him that it's not too scary to go live with all this stuff. He's going to have a bit of a live chat, so check out my upcoming events and make a reservation for that. In the meantime, I got this really nice note from a really nice dude named Sammy Boller that says, Rick, I hope you enjoy the album. Da-da-da-da. Thanks again for having me on the channel. All the best. Sammy even gave me a sticker. And let's see.
Look out.
Ding dong, who's at my door? It is Sammy Boller. How you doing, buddy?
Hey, Rick. Thanks for having me on, man. Good to see you.
Mate,
as always.
As always, it's always good to catch up with you, mate. Hey,
big time.
What time is it in your part of the world right now?
A little after 5 o'clock.
Not too bad then.
Yeah, it's not too bad, man. It's finally starting to get hot here, so it's a good change of pace.
Yeah. Well, I live in the world of endless summer. We get a little bit colder at night, but this is 7 o'clock in the morning, and I'm in a t-shirt come winter, so it's not too bad. Dude,
That's
your
awesome.
album, I got to say, thank you for sending that. Man, folks, he even sent me a little baggie of picks because we were talking about picks and how I was looking for some new ones, and most of them lose their shape and everything. So he sent me these little guys there. Is that going to actually focus? I get it right? Nah, you're not going to see it. Well, it's got his autograph on him. They're really cool, man. They don't lose their shape.
Thanks. You've been using them? That's
I
cool,
have.
man. That's
I
awesome.
have. I can scrape with them. They don't lose their shape or anything. Really cool. Where can folks get your album though, mate? Because this is fantastic.
Thank you so much. Thanks for checking it out, man. All the main streaming platforms, Spotify, Apple Music, all that stuff. And there's CDs available too at candywrap.com.
Cool.
So it's been pretty cool, man. It's been out a couple months already. It's been a little weird since we can't go out and play and all that, but it's been cool to finally have some music out for sure.
It's bad timing, isn't it? Like you want to be out on the road promoting it, but
I know, man. Yeah, I was just starting to line stuff up, like to go out and play, but it's all good, man. It's just one of those things, Everybody's in the same boat right now, so
absolutely
nothing you can do.
Well,
yeah.
That's where I've just been making some Skype calls and talking to friends, and ding dong, there's a little ring on my bell. Who have we got here? Hello, it's Steve Stevens. Hey, Steve.
Hey, guys.
Hello.
Hey, Sammy, Rick.
How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good. Everybody healthy out there?
I am.
Yeah.
Sammy seems it. You seem it. Yeah. We're all doing the right thing.
Yeah.
Looking out for others.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Steve, man, I was lucky enough to go and see you not that long ago at the River Stage in Brisbane. And, man, that was a ripper gig. Really loved it. Your tone live. Just as good. Just as good as the record. And, I mean, you do set the benchmark for tones on record ever since I was a kid.
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, if I don't know how to make Billy Idol music sound good by now, I should. I'm in the wrong business. Then,
absolutely.
So.
What I tell people when they bring you up, mate, is before I ever played guitar, I was totally into synthesizers and drum machines. Before I played guitar, I knew that Billy Idol songs had cool guitar in it. Not cool guitar, just awesome guitar in it. Way before I even touched the instruments. So you touched my heart as a kid with those sounds, man.
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, there was no like big master plan or anything, but I think it's a matter of we had a great producer, Keith Forsey, who did all our records, and certainly by the time we did Rebel Yell, I've got to give full credit to Dave Whitman, who was our engineer. Who, if you just Google Dave Whitman, and everything from Mahavishnu Orchestra to Led Zeppelin to Kiss, he engineered all that stuff, and he really brought my guitar. He made it sound the way I heard it in my head.
Cool. It's a killer sound, man. I really don't know too much about how you got started playing and what you did leading up to Idol. What sparked the fire for young Steve? What got you into playing, man?
Really, it was, I was very fortunate in the time that I grew up, I have a brother who's 5 years older than me. All of his friends played guitar, and I grew up in Rockaway, which was a beach area, so everybody would go down to the beach and play acoustic guitar. And one day my dad brought home, I think he paid $35 for a guitar. I just wanted to hang out with the other kids,
Mm-hmm.
And but this was the period of the super folk music, James Taylor, Joni Mitchell, Simon and Garfunkel. So everybody played acoustic guitar, and there was a song, a protest singer named Phil Oakes, who was from my neighborhood, and his sister was a guitar teacher, and she kind of got me on my way and kind of showed me chord shapes and things like that. And,
Cool.
But really, I just wanted to hang out with my brother.
Wow.
Yeah.
How about you, Sammy? How did you get a start, mate?
Both my parents are musicians, man. So like music was always kind of around the house, and I started playing piano when I was really young, but I always wanted to play guitar like as long as I could remember, So I kind of like begged my parents to get me a guitar for years, And I finally started when I was like 10 or 11.
Cool.
But that's kind of how I got into it, Just trying to feel cool, play guitar,
Yeah. So you're playing. You've got a lot of the two-handed thing going on where you're playing almost piano-like. So I think we talked about it last time that it could be slightly influenced from spending a bit of time on the piano first, huh?
I think so, a little bit. Yeah.
Yep.
Like as far as like playing chord progressions and stuff like that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know. I haven't thought about it in a long time, but I think a little bit.
Yep.
For sure.
So for both of you, like Steve, you said, playing folk music, and I know I started in high school. You had to learn to play sort of folky things, and it was the only thing I was good at. I was absolutely terrible at anything else. Still am. What was the bridging gap that got from playing folk music to rock and roll?
Well, I got my first crappy acoustic when I was about eight years old, and I didn't get an electric till I was 13. And I think I was not really yearning for an electric because there was so much folk music around, and even the things that were popular by bands like the Who, Pinball Wizard was the biggest hit at that time. So I was fine just puttering away on my acoustic guitar. But then I think I walked through my neighborhood and I heard a garage band.
Yeah.
These were the days, especially on the weekends, everybody would open up their garage. And there was literally probably about 4 bands in my neighborhood, garage bands. Yeah. And I went, oh, yeah, I guess I got to get a guitar, for electric guitar to be in a garage band. So when I was 13, I got a Univox electric guitar.
Cool. How about you, Sammy?
Awesome.
What was your first guitar, man?
Squire Strat from Guitar Center.
Nice.
That was about it.
Yeah.
It came with a really shitty little amp, so I used to turn it up like just all the way, man. It sounded terrible, I'm sure, but I spent a lot of years doing that, man.
Awesome. I think mine was just a really cheap Strat knockoff as well. I didn't even have an amp for a while. I actually grew up living in a caravan with my mum, and as an amplifier, I used to just hold my headstock against the wall, and the whole caravan would actually resonate. And it was like a huge, big acoustic guitar. I'm sure the neighbours could hear me, but yeah, we're going to start somewhere,
awesome.
huh? Yeah. So when you guys progressed
really
into getting electric guitars, who were the big heroes for you guys? How about you, Steve?
Sammy? It was just at the, that early period of English rock guitar, just starting with progressive rock. And when I heard Yes, it was the first time I heard a guitar player who was using all these styles that I had already accumulated, playing folk guitar, classical guitar. I had a flamenco guitar teacher before I had an electric. And I heard Roundabout. And I went, oh, wow, he's playing classical guitar.
Cool.
And then electric guitar. So I just really, really took to a lot of those early 70s English progressive rock guitar players.
Yeah.
Robert Fripp, Steve Howe, Steve Hackett. And of course, Jimmy Page and Led Zeppelin was a huge influence.
Cool. How about you, Sammy?
Absolutely. I was just watching How the West Was Won the other night with Jimmy Page, man. It's just amazing. But for me, it was like the big one was Van Halen. Like that's what kind of made me want to pick up a guitar. Him and Randy Rhoads are probably like the two biggest for me.
Yep.
But after that, I've got like really big into like all the shredders, like Yngwie and Paul Gilbert, and like a lot of the instrumental stuff back in the day. But a little bit of everything, man. I love a lot of classic stuff too, like Hendrix and Jimmy Page, all that.
Yeah, yeah. So Steve, you touched on the flamenco thing there, and that's a big part of your playing. Anyone that's seen you live would know that you stretch out and play big flamenco style solos. I've got albums of yours, Flamenco A Go Go, and even some of the other ones. There's always that element about it. Where did that come from?
I mean, guitar teachers back when I was a kid, they really, it was hard to find somebody, who you could kind of identify with. A lot of them were just, trying to teach me all this like fuddy-duddy stuff, and let alone teach me any rock songs or anything. And so I went to a music summer camp in Long Island, and the guitar teacher was, even before he played a note, he told his life story.
Yep.
And he was a Romanian.
Wow.
He was a Romanian gypsy who escaped from the Nazis during the Second World War with his guitar. And
wow.
And he left with his brother. His brother didn't survive. Died somewhere in the mountains or something. And then he picked up his guitar and explained what flamenco was and how it was this kind of nomadic people's. When I was a little kid, my grandfather, came over also during the Second World War and explained to me what a cantor was in Jewish religion, and I identified with it. And the minute he picked up the guitar, this guy played as if his life depended upon it.
Wow.
With so much passion and so much technique. I didn't know what it was, but it certainly wasn't Simon and Garfunkel.
Yeah.
Wow.
And he's playing all these, fast runs and banging on the guitar. And I went, I want to learn whatever that is, And he was just such a charismatic guy and had this incredible love of life. And the guitar saved his life. And I just, he was the first guitar teacher that I respected, really.
Yeah, yeah. So that really shows like playing from the heart, doesn't it? And I know talking to Sammy,
oh my God.
like it's all about playing from the heart. Wow, what an amazing guy to come across at such an impressionable age.
Yeah, and then as luck would have it, when I went to high school, one of the other students, I went to the Fame School or whatever, and one of the other students was Mario Escudero Jr., whose dad was the guitarist in the Jose Greco Flamenco Dance Company, which my parents had brought me to see. So again, there it is, another example of, flamenco, and I could learn from this guy. And it's just always been, I've just always gravitated towards it. I'm not a traditional flamenco player, I just rip off the good guys.
Yeah, yeah. It's a great flavor that you add in there. Man, you just said something there. You went to the Fame School. Is that like the TV show Fame?
Yeah.
Yeah. That is so cool because before I was into guitars, I was into synthesizers and drum machines because of that show. They had the guy on that show who was just a one-man band, and I was like, I got to do that. And that sort of got me, my mum bought me an organ, and I got into the drum machine on that and messing around. There's definitely a strong electronic element to some of your stuff as well, man. Is that something that you picked up on early, like programming and stuff like that?
That's really all from our producer, Keith Forsey. Keith worked in Germany under Giorgio Moroder, and Keith worked on all those Donna Summers records, and so there was it was really a strange mixture. You had this punk rock singer. I mean, Billy's influences are so beyond punk, but up until that time, he was known as, the guy from Generation X.
Yep.
So you got a punk rock singer, a classic rock guitar player, and a disco producer. And that's kind of what it became, We all kind of like brought our strengths to it, and it became this kind of dance rock thing.
Cool. Because
So
I think
cool.
sometimes having all those different influences so different really comes up with a new sound, doesn't it? And that sounds like you struck the jackpot
Absolutely.
there.
Yeah, yeah. I always think it's good if you have a band that guys have different tastes.
Absolutely.
You know, even if it's off the wall, if some guy like loves opera or something, or it's always good to have another influence.
Totally.
Yeah, I completely agree, man. Yeah, it's awesome.
So prior to meeting Billy Idol, you said he was in Generation X. You were obviously aware of that, I guess. How did you actually hook up with Billy and get it all started? And was there that magic moment that you remember when you actually went, whoa, we got something here?
Well, I was in a band previous to Billy, and we had recorded for Island Records, and the whole project. It's a long story, but the project ended up being shelved. The album wasn't really up to standards. We were signed to Island Records, and and then we got picked up for management by Bill Aucoin, who was the manager of Kiss.
Cool.
And I had what I really appreciated was the management was very honest and said, probably not going to happen with this band. And I think I had realized, I didn't really know much about writing songs or anything. I just played guitar. And so I left the band, and we started to put a band together. We ran an ad in the local newspaper, looking for other musicians. And I think within a couple of weeks, Bill called me and said, have you ever heard of Billy Idol? And there was a magazine called Rock Scene, and that was based out of New York. And they went over to England and profiled Billy. And by then, I think I knew Dancing with Myself.
Cool.
From Generation X. And I said, oh, yeah, he's the Dancing with Myself guy. And they said, yeah, well, we're managing him. He's just moved to New York, and you guys should meet. And it wasn't like, oh, my God, I found my partner for life, and we're going to spend the next 40 years making music. But the way I approached it was that he didn't know any musicians in New York, and I knew everyone. So I kind of said, look, I'll help you put a band together. I know some really fine musicians. You should check out this guy on bass, this guy on drums, da-da-da-da. And when it comes time for guitar play, I hope you'll consider me. And by then I had kind of figured out, because I certainly wasn't from the punk rock school. My heroes were Jeff Beck and kind of some of these bloated bands that punk rock was rebelling against. So, but we hit on some things because he loved Lou Reed, and he loved the New York Dolls and Velvet Underground and all these bands out of New York that I kind of knew their music from anyway. And then we kind of found common ground. And we went, oh, you like that? Okay, And it was really just figuring out what each of us liked.
Cool.
Got it.
So, Sammy, have you got any intentions of putting a band together to go out and tour the stuff that you've got going?
Yeah, I was planning on it, man. I had just gotten an agent right before quarantine hit, so it was kind of bad timing or whatever.
Yeah.
But I feel like everything now is just pushed back about a year,
Yeah.
So hopefully it's starting to go out.
And have you had any
any
magic? Have you had any magic moments there yourself where you've got together with people to play? And
I have, man. Yeah, when I joined I was in a band called Citizen Zero right when I got out of college. So I was about like 19, 20 years old. And we met through a producer in town named Al Sutton.
Yeah.
But I had kind of had a moment like that where it was like, as soon as you hit the first note, it was like, wow, this is something really special,
Cool.
So we were together before I started doing the instrumental thing. We were on the road and we got signed and stuff out of Detroit in 2016. So
Yeah.
spent a lot of years doing that, man.
Cool.
Playing
Cool.
in clubs, going on the road, hitting it hard,
Yeah.
So I learned a lot, man. There's nothing like being in a band like that,
Yeah. So, Steve, you said you've been playing with Billy for 40 years.
Almost 40 years.
Almost, yeah.
That's incredible, man.
Yeah.
And you did go off and do a few other little things in the meantime. And was it a case that after a while you just went, man, I miss making music with this guy. I really got to reconnect? Or
Yeah, I mean, in our case, there was no big falling out or anything like that.
Yep.
He was going to move. He was moving to Los Angeles. I wanted to stay in New York, and I obviously, after the success of Rebel Yell and all that, record labels came, courting and offering me deals and all that kind of stuff. And I met Ted Templeman from Warner Brothers, and not only did I love Ted's work with Van Halen, but also the Doobie Brothers. If anybody wants to read a fascinating biography, Ted's book has just come out, and it's for Van Halen fans, it's chock full of all the behind the scenes stuff, but it's fascinating to read. It's a really good book. But I really like Ted, and I signed to Warner Brothers and decided to do my solo project, and but it was always with the intention that Billy would go to Los Angeles and work with other people, but we always knew down the road we'll reconvene, and when we got back together after I had moved to Los Angeles, we didn't have to patch anything up, or because we never had an argument about it, or never slagged each other off. There was no reason to.
That's great, man.
We were
Right.
both very supportive, and it was just a matter of okay, I'm going to do my thing, and you're going to do your thing for a while, and we'll grow as musicians because of it.
Yeah. Cool. That's good to hear, because life's too short, isn't it, to be burning bridges with people that you got a kinship with.
Yeah, I mean, 38 years later, we're still friends, and we socialize outside of the music, and we just enjoy what we do. It's really that simple.
I guess after all this time, you guys would just be able to read each other, like on stage as well.
And even musically, when we're writing or something, you kind of know. I kind of know how to accompany, a song for him.
Absolutely.
That's really it.
Cool. Man, we got a lot of people
So cool.
just asking about the racks in the background there. That's some impressive stuff. Is that your home studio that you're in?
Yeah.
That's quite a setup, mate. That's different to what you take out on the road. That's not your road rig that you move around or anything, is it?
No, actually, we just Dave Friedman just built me a new live system that's no racks. It's all pedals on the floor, and it sounds incredible. And as I mentioned to you, I'm now using IR impulse responses live, and there's a lot. I got to tell you, man, as an old timer, I've been around a lot of gear. There's never been a better time for guitar gear. It's incredible what is available to us for musicians. I mean, you can, when I was starting out, you could not get a decent electric guitar for $250, and that's when $250 was quite a sum of money. But now you can actually go into a music store and buy a decent instrument, and stuff is really small, and it's just so much stuff available now.
Absolutely. And just
Awesome.
You mentioned using speaker IRs. Sammy, have you gone down that road, mate, with when you're recording or playing live, or you miking up?
For recording at home, I use a Torpedo Live, man. I have a couple IRs that I really love, but that's like completely changed my life, man. Like being able to record at home. Like I'm in a little apartment, so you can't really mic up a cabinet, or else the cops will be coming every night. So it's been a really, really cool thing. I think that the trick for me has just been finding a couple IRs that really work no matter what you plug into them,
Yeah.
But yeah, I love it, man. It's super cool.
Cool.
That's cool. How are you running them live, Steve? Are you using a specific box, or what are you using?
I use 2 amps live. So I've got a Friedman Brown Eye, and then a Friedman SS, and I've settled on using the Boss Waza IR box, whatever it's called.
That's awesome. Yeah.
And we just tried it in sound check. I would say for the last 4 years, we've had offstage cabinets and all this, and the mic would get bumped, or we'd have to set up quickly, and the mic wasn't in the right place, and I was never really. We're all on in-ears, and I was always struggling to get a good sound in my ears, and I would hear distortion and all this stuff, and I just said, let me just try this in a sound check. Let me just get these boxes in, and my front of house guy, we plugged him in, and my front of house guy got on his mic and he said, "Oh my God, you cannot believe what this sounds like out here." And
so awesome.
And it sounded fantastic in my in-ears as well. And all of the other band members said, "What are you doing? It sounds incredible." And I said, "No speakers." So, there you go. I mean, for live, it's really, really been a blessing.
That's so awesome. That's good to know. It's good for your ears, man. Like I've avoided going in ears for so long just because of that. Like it's so hard to get the consistency, but that's really good to know that it changed that.
Yeah, if you go to in-ears with IRs, you'll be so happy. You'll be really happy.
So speaking of...
That's really good to know.
Speaking of in-ears, Steve, when you're running them, have you adding sort of more ambience to your feed in your ears? Because my experience with using IRs, not IRs, but in-ears, is that I think I'm playing terribly because it's just so direct, but I was just getting a direct feed out of a Kemper. So do you add a little bit of ambience to the signal in ear?
I have a splash of reverb that's only in my ears.
Yep.
Because I don't want to muck about with what my front of house guy is getting. He wants that direct sound because the room is going to add reverb anyway, just by nature of the PA. So I just add a little bit of reverb, and we've had the same musicians in our band. Mostly, we're going on 10 years now, so I kind of know how to dial myself into. I've got a really good mix of the whole band in my ears and stuff. So
cool.
It sounds pretty damn good in there.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to getting the new Torpedo Captor X and I'm going to try miking up stuff as well as running a direct line out of that. But I don't think I'm going to have to mic up at all, by the sounds of things. I was talking to Bob Spencer from Roast Tattoo a couple of days ago on here, and when he sent me his album, and I said this to you before, Steve, when I played it, man, my jaw dropped, and I straight away texted him and just went, "How's your fucking guitar sound, buddy? Whoa!" Yeah. Not going to ask you about it now. Let's talk about it live. But I find that I can EQ speaker IRs a lot more and not have as much phasiness going on. Is that your experience as well?
Yeah, I mean, every situation is different. I recently I have my side band, Deadland Ritual, and we went in with producer Bob Marlette, who's done, everything from Sabbath to, Sebastian Bach and all this stuff. And I just brought my guitar because I knew Bob would have cabinets and amps and stuff like that. He doesn't use IRs, but I just trusted what he had, but you touched on a really important thing, in that phasing and all of that stuff. You have to make sure that your engineer is very aware of if you're going to mic up a cabinet or multiple mic in, make sure everything's in phase and all that. But with IRs, it's very easy to get stuff perfectly in phase. Prior
to using the IRs, were you using any ISO cabs or anything? Because that's one thing. I
tried that. Yeah. It sounded horrible.
Yeah.
Yeah, I tried that.
Are you still running a wet, dry, wet type setup?
No, we've gone to 2 amps and 2 cabinets. Yep. Different speakers in each cabinet, and it's a quasi stereo setup, but they're not the same sounds on each side. We've kind of dialed in, so one amp will be more top and bottom, and one amp has a bit more mid-range in it. Because there's 2 guitar players in Billy Idol. There's Billy Marson, who's the rhythm guitar player. So I don't need my sound to be spread across the spectrum. We're both kind of like left and right, sort of. So I just needed a system that would give me all of the frequencies that I needed.
Cool.
Got it.
So I actually had a bit of a play of your signature head when I was over at 42 Gear Street with Dave, and there was a BE 100 as well, and I noticed that your head was a bit thicker in the lower mids. Am I right in thinking that? Yeah. Yep. Was there a particular head that you said to Dave, man, build me something like this, but then I want a bit of this on top. What was the influence behind your?
I don't know if you can see, but the amp right behind me is my very first Friedman. Can you see that?
It's just out of shot. Aha.
There you go.
Okay, so that amp started as a sort of a clone of my favorite Plexi, which I've recorded with for years and years. And, so I wanted that kind of sound with a little bit more gain and a usable master volume. But then I realized that Dave knows a lot more about this stuff than I do. So I just kind of like, in the case of my amp, I just, I used very general terms. I said I want an amp that sounds a bit like that, but doesn't get thin when I play single notes up, the top two strings. And I've learned now just to listen to Dave and shut up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah. So, Sammy, you're using a BE100, aren't you?
Yeah, forever, man. Or for the past few years, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the go-to for me, man. Yeah. Eventually I want to upgrade to the BE100 Deluxe. Eventually, but I mean, I'm so happy with this thing. Like, it's good when you're so comfortable with your rig, everywhere, everything you can get out of it. So
yeah,
I've been sticking with it, but yeah, eventually I played the Deluxe when Dave and I were doing some clinics last year, and that's kind of where I want to go next.
Cool.
For sure.
Cool. My introduction to the Friedman sound was actually back when I was using Randall MTS gear, and it's back when Dave had Rack Systems, the company, and I bought a module off him, and a modified SL Plus module, which he told me was actually a prototype that he built for you, Steve. Do you have any good memories about playing the MTS gear? Did that sort of?
Yeah,
it was a good system, wasn't it?
I traveled with Dave. My first experience, I think, was right after I was with Vince Neil. We were supporting Van Halen, and I used to bring my vintage stuff out on the road, and it was always, it was very hard to, an amplifier from 1967 isn't going to behave that well on tour. So I started, Eddie arranged for me to get some of the 5150s from Peavey. And I used that for a while, and Dave said, "Oh, I can make those sound even better," and da-da-da-da. He worked on that. And then we went from that to those modules, as you mentioned, the Randall, I think it is.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And and I followed him through that, and then he was doing amps for Blankenship, and I got one of those, and then Friedman, and I just followed Dave wherever he went. And, okay,
He's definitely got the ear for it, hasn't he?
Yeah, and he's, there's a thing about, Dave introduced me to Sammy, and there's a thing, every one of these guys, like Sammy, these Detroit guys are like the salt of the earth, hardworking, incredibly talented dudes. My guitar tech was from Detroit. I just like, and I spent some time there when I got to do a clinic with Sammy for the first time, and there's just a certain work ethic and I guess because it's was the car town or something, there's just I don't know, the great players have a great history of music, and I got to say that all of these Detroit guys are pretty cool.
Thank you so much, man.
Yeah.
I got to say, me and my buddy Dave Black went to see when you guys played, when Billy played, I think it was last summer when you guys were doing the tour with Brian Adams.
Right.
And that was such an incredible show, man. It was, Detroit loves you guys. They always have, but it was such a great show, man. Just killer.
So, Steve, you mentioned the Plexi behind you. Is that like a super lead or?
It started. There's four inputs on it. This is before Dave even had the was doing runs of amps. I don't know exactly where he got the parts for this. So it was copied after a super lead, and although there's only one input on that, but it was, I think he was just using existing parts that were available at that time. Before, this is way before Friedman amps was actually a thing.
Sure.
So yeah, I wanted it to sound a bit like a super lead with more gain, a usable master volume. That was it. You know,
Cool.
there's no depth or present. You know, there's not. This is really a no frills amp.
Yeah, yeah. I got to say, when I did get that module, which he said was a prototype for you, I did A/B it to just the stock Randall ones at a music store one day, and everybody's jaws were just dropped because they talk about it sounding like taking the blanket off the speaker, and that's exactly what it was. That he just brought that clarity and that high end, all the harmonics. It was just amazing.
Yeah, I can't take any credit for any of that stuff.
But having said that, I heard you post a little thing a day or two ago of some presets that you'd come up with on the Axe effects, and whoa, man! Like I was just listening on my little iMac speakers, and it just jumped out. And there's no denying a lot of that tone is your hands. You could give that exact same rig to somebody else; it's not going to sound the same. But did you find it very hard to try and get that to dial those tones in with the new Axe effects?
No, I had one of the. Still have one of the. I had the XFX one, first one. I've been on board with Fractal for many, many years, and then I got the XFX 2, and I found it very difficult for me personally to do editing in the little window, and also there were so many variables and things, parameters that I just didn't understand. There was just, and I kind of like got lost in the thing, and then they sent me. I don't know, for some reason I kind of reignited my relationship with them, and they sent me the FM3, the little unit,
cool.
The floor unit. And I fell in love with it because it's really easy to work with. It sounds absolutely great, and it's fun. Their new software, the way that it interacts between my laptop and the unit, is really a lot of fun. And I said, "This is great, man." What? And they said, "Well, what do you have in your studio?" I said, "I still have my, XFX 2," and they sent me. This is a loaner at the moment. And I said, "I'll do some presets for you, just to see how well I can get on with it." And it was really easy, actually. It was really, I just put the record on and go, "Oh yeah, that sounds right. A little bit more of this, a little bit more of that." It's very easy to use, though.
Cool.
Awesome.
I really got to agree. I had an Axe 2, and I thought there is no way I could use this in a live situation in a cover band type thing if I needed to. Oh, you need this sound now, without the editor. So I have heard that having the bigger knobs and everything, and a bigger interface in general, solves a lot of that issue.
Yeah, it's just in general, just even the stock presets that come sound great. And what really surprised me was with the presets that I've done for Fractal was I wanted to give them Atomic Playboys and Rebel Yell. So I went, okay, what amp and cabinet did I use for that? Okay, da-da-da. So I just chose those same pieces of gear in the Axe effects, and lo and behold, they sounded like what the original combinations did. So they're very true to, it's very true to what the description is.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, you said about having too many options in there. That was a big thing for me. Was I didn't know if I was going forwards or backwards. Sometimes it's cool to just have an amp with plug in, have a volume, and you go, whoa, there's a sound. My experience with the older modelers, not just the Axe effects, but I've had them all, was they sound great if you're just sitting there playing it yourself without playing with anybody else. But as soon as you try and play in a band situation or you record it in a mix, that's where I was noticing the difference. It just didn't have its own little space in the mix that would pop its head out without covering up something else. Yeah, I don't know if that's been your same experience using them in the past. Or...
Yeah, I mean, in the past.
Yeah. But have they nailed it with the X3? That's a lot better in that regard, I think.
I've done some recording. There's actually, I'm getting ready to launch a new website, and I did a track that'll premiere on there, and I found this very useful for that. it blended well with all the other instruments.
Cool.
That's awesome.
How about you, Sammy?
What-
You done much with in the way of modelers over the years, man?
Not much, man. I mean, I've used like for certain sessions and stuff. Sometimes there'll only be a Kemper there, so that's what you end up using. But not a ton. But I heard the clip you posted yesterday, Steve. That sounded amazing. That was all the Axe effects.
It's all Axe effects, no cabinets, just straight into Pro Tools. And I think
That's awesome.
You know who really convinced me was Pete Thorne, because he gets all this stuff way before anybody else does, because he does demos for these companies, and Pete, he's very honest with me, and he'll text me every now and again and say, hey, you should check this out or check this pedal out or whatever. And he said, have you checked out the new Axe Effect stuff? It's really good and really easy. And I kind of went, oh, okay, I'll give them a call and, try it out,
Hey, Sammy, you said you did a bit of a clinic tour with Steve and Dave. What's something that people don't know about Steve that you learnt while you were away with him, mate, that can be shared with people? No, I'm putting you on the spot here, mate.
The one thing I was blown away with, man, is when we did that show in San Diego last year. Me and your cousin Dave were sitting in the back, and you told that story about Michael Jackson on the video shoot.
Yeah.
And that's where me and Dave in the back were just our jaws were on the floor. So I don't know if you want to talk about that, but it was when Mike showed up to the video shoot. That story is incredible.
Yeah.
It's quite ironic. I didn't realize until after I booked a few people to come in for a chat that within a matter of days, I've booked 3 people that have played for Michael Jackson. Yeah, yourself, Louis Shelton, who played on all the classic Jackson 5 stuff, and I've got Jennifer Batten on Sunday your time, Monday my time.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I'll tell you one thing about Sammy.
Yeah, go.
That surprised me, and because he's so good at the tapping stuff, right? And most times when I've seen people do that, they work it out, or it takes them. They have to compose something. And when we did our clinic tour, we wrote a piece of music together. And I said, I had some chords at the beginning, and I said, it'd be great if you work out some tapping thing or something for the intro. And he did it on the spot. It's just so second nature to him that he knows everywhere to go on the fretboard. That it astounded me.
Cool.
I don't know about that. Thank you, man.
It was pretty humbling because it sounded so right, and he had obviously, you looked at the chords and said, okay, this, however you did it, it was immediate and it was instinctive, and I think that's why you're so good at it, because it's not something you're having to think about mathematically. It's second nature to you. And that's the difference between what you do tapping wise and I think a lot of the other guys, where it just ends up being like math or something. Like yours is really musical. So
man. That means really the world, man. Thank you so much. Really cool. Putting that track together was so much fun. And it just really meant a lot. It was really, really cool. Yeah, Steve, for those listening, that Steve and I, we had that show in San Diego, and then a couple days before, Friedman set us up, and I went over to Steve's house, and we kind of put a little tune together, whatever. It was pretty cool because we didn't really get to rehearse it. We just kind of went up and we put it together, but it was that was a pretty cool. That was a really special thing for me. So it meant a lot.
Yeah, I think we actually spoke about recording it properly until this Corona shit hit.
I know, man. We'll get to it. We'll get to it eventually.
That's something we'll definitely do in the future.
It was so cool. Absolutely.
Just hearing you guys talking about the fretboard, I actually recorded a bit of a video with you, Sammy. Remember the one with you and Mika in Germany?
That was so much fun.
Yeah,
it was a blast.
It was funny because we had bartender Dave Friedman behind us, handing over the beers and the whiskeys. And the funny thing is, Mika and I, we don't drink, man. So I had to go through all that footage. I had hours of footage, and a lot of it I'm going, I'm drunk. I'm not good drunk. I talk way too much drunk. But if anybody's interested in Sammy's approach to the fretboard, have a look on my channel. There is a little video that he did. with Mika. Steve, your approach to the fretboard, is there a particular way? Do you use like the cage system? Are you going into more 3-note per string, or do you see it? If you were to explain to somebody, how do you view the fretboard?
I think I have a very basic knowledge of theory, and I think the obviously I'm usually when I work with people, it's usually as a co-writer or in some capacity I'm involved in creating a song rather than I very rarely just get called in to go play a solo or something. So I'm usually thinking about my guitar parts as an arrangement, from an arrangement standpoint. So I'm usually thinking in terms of broadening the chord structure, and I'll usually look at what the root notes that the bass is doing, or what I imagine the bass should be doing, and I'm writing something counter to that. Because I get bored very easily when I hear bands that every instrument is going along like this, and the drums are playing the one beat, and everybody's doing this, and I think that's the whole. That's the great thing about Led Zeppelin is, the sum of the parts, even though it's bass, drums, and guitar, is so much bigger than what they are, because there's this arrangement thing where they're all like little. I look at it a lot like looking at an old watch. You have some of these gears that are small and they're spinning really fast, and there's another gear that's larger and he's spinning at a different rate. And so I look at the guitar a lot as being one of those gears, and take into account the melody. And so I definitely don't necessarily look at the fretboard as I'm not pattern based. I try not to be pattern based. Yeah. And just play pentatonics within that. Okay, we're on a B, I'm on the 7th fret or something. I always try and look at something alternative to that. I think that's what makes bands great. And if you look at even U2, what the Edge plays on guitar, sometimes the vocal melody might go to, let's say, A major or something, but the Edge is keeping tension by staying in B against the rest of the band. And the Who were like that. Townsend was very good at doing that as well. So I try not to fall into that thing of being pattern based and look at it as, okay, well, I look at the chord structure and where can maybe I'll play G sharp minor against them staying in B major because it's more interesting or more harmonically rich.
Well, I got to say, you're not a cliche guitar player. There's a lot of guys that there's certain cliches that everybody knows. As you learn those cliches, you recognize them a lot more when a flurry of notes goes past and you go, oh, yeah. I can hear what that is now. I did film a little bit of you playing at the River Stage in Brisbane a few months ago, and the technology is there now where you can put it into software and slow it down. And I actually slowed down this ripper lick that you played in Flesh for Fantasy, because I just had to know, what the hell is that? That was really cool. And I just noticed it's sort of a lot of going across the strings. Am I going to embarrass myself and grab my guitar and actually play in front of Steve Stevens? I am. I'm just going to ask you where you get this kind of influence from. Just bear with me one second. And if you guys want to talk amongst yourselves, do that. I'll just switch the screen.
Man, I love that analogy you said about like a watch, like a band is like a watch, where sometimes, somebody's spinning really fast in the middle, and
absolutely.
Maybe the overarching thing is the hour, the hour side. Right, that's a really, really cool way to look at it. I love that.
Yeah, I mean, it all works together. I mean, it's like,
Yeah, it's all together. That's super, super cool.
All right, I don't know if you guys are even going to be able to hear this, but yeah, you did a really cool lick, and I can't remember exactly what it was, but what I'm saying is just you sort of, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's very you, isn't it? Let me put a bit of delay on that to this, that, and sliding that around in all these really cool shapes. Where does that come from for you?
I don't know. I mean, a lot of those kind of linear lines. I was a huge Keith Emerson fan,
Okay.
and I kind of took a lot of, when he'd solo on, his Moog solos and things like that, and he, some of those kind of legato patterns like that, and then move them about their neck. I think I'm just trying, in my head at least, I'm trying to emulate some of the things that he did.
Cool. And then there's the intro to Rebel Yell. Like, a lot of people don't realize that that's actually guitar and not keyboards. Like, I've gone to play that in cover bands, and they go to count in the start, and I've got bass players and keyboards players going, and I just look at them and go, no, man, I've got this. I know how he goes. And it kind of loses the impact if everybody tries to do it.
Not only is it guitar, but it's not overdubbed. So
yeah.
But
That's so amazing.
That really comes from the folk thing. If you go back and listen to the classic, the Leo Kottke record, it's just called 6 and 12-string guitar. There's a lot of stuff that he's doing on there with those kind of patterns. He was doing it on acoustic, obviously, but that's where I got a lot of that kind of stuff from.
Cool.
His Leo Kottke.
That's awesome.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know you were a fan of his, man. That's awesome.
Oh my God,
he's incredible. Yeah, he's incredible.
There's that one piece that's on that record. If anyone wants to go Google,
Yeah, I'm gonna write it down.
the original, there's some footage of him. Now he slowed it down, but there's a tune called Vaseline Machine Gun. And if you find him from like early 70s playing that, your jaw will drop. It's just incredible.
I'm gonna write that down.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to check out some of that stuff too. I'm taking little notes as I go.
Just listen to the recording on the album. It's like unbelievable.
Yeah.
Just smoking. Wow.
Yeah. Oh, incredible. Yeah. I was fortunate when when I would tag along with my brother. We went to see John Fahey, and we got to see Leo Kottke as well. So, those, and I got to say, another guy who's incredible acoustic player, who's not easy to play his parts, is James Taylor. That was another guy.
I agree. Yep. That's incredible, man.
His stuff is not easy, and then to sing on top of it, that dude's really talented.
Absolutely.
It's unbelievable. Yeah.
Right?
It's unbelievable. Yeah. I love. Yeah. Some of those guitar parts are really interesting.
And probably, I'd say, has the most beautifully recorded acoustic guitar sound of anybody. James Taylor's guitars just sound incredible.
I know, man. Yeah, I wonder what they were doing. I don't know if you know, like, how they recorded some of that stuff.
There's some clips on YouTube where he explains, because it's all his fingers, and he wraps his right hand with these kind of cloth. And he plays his strings are very close to the neck. He's got a very light touch. And it's kind of like almost like the way he plays it's almost like a dulcimer or something. He gets this tone that's naturally just James Taylor.
So cool.
It's funny you mentioned quite a few guys from the 70s, and I know just friends of mine who were 10, 15 years older than me, who were learning to play. I learned to play in the late 80s, but these guys learned to play in the 70s. They're just coming from a different place to me. Like, to me, I'm deeply got the Van Halen thing ingrained in me, and the Steve Stevens thing as well. A lot of people sort of go, "Oh man, you got that tight right hand rhythm thing. Oh, are you into James Hetfield?" And I say, "No, it comes from Steve Stevens." Yeah, so that's a big thing, man. But I kind of need to go back and listen to some of those players that my older friends tell me about that didn't rub off on me. What was the moment for you? Was it Van Halen that came along that you went, whoa, okay, this changes things, or was there guys before that really got you into picking the chops up?
Well, there was, I knew I needed to get better when I was a fan of King Crimson. I like that, and then when the second version of King Crimson came out with John Wetton and Bill Bruford on drums, there's a piece called Fracture. I forgot which record it's on. Might be on Starless. And it's an alternate picking thing. And to this day, I can't play it. and I just went, I think early on I realized that I didn't want to just be reliant on hammer-ons, that guys like Steve Howe and John McLaughlin, and then I think when Al Di Meola came out, it was like, oh shit. Yeah, I got to learn to pick every note.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Sammy's got the whole picking thing going on there. How about you, Sammy? What was a moment where you just thought, wow, I really need to step up my game? I think you said Randy Rhoads was a big one for you, right?
When I was a kid, that was like, at first I was like so into Van Halen. That's like the only guitar player I knew, like that was it, just that's all I listened to for about, I don't know, 6 months or something when I started playing guitar. But yeah, when I discovered him, it was like, oh wow, there's other guitar players out there, so I was pretty young when I was, first diving in all that, but I'm trying to think, like after that stuff, it was like I started getting into more like the instrumental guitar players, where it's like the whole song is guitar, like the guitar is like the voice,
Mm-hmm.
And I think for me is like, that's like, all right, maybe there's somewhere farther to go, as opposed to only holding it down and maybe playing a solo, there's been a lot of moments like that in my life, man, where it's like, wow, I cannot believe, like, people push it farther and farther,
Well, I saw a guy just the other day. I was around at Louis Shelton's place opening with something, and he played me on YouTube. Trying to think of this cat's name, but he was shredding, playing with his fingers flamenco style, like they had 4 picks on there, and I gotta have to look that guy up, and provided he speaks English, I think he could have been South American, but whoa, I've got to look that cat up. Is there any new breed of players around that you guys just think, wow? I mean, Sammy's one of those guys. He's the new breed. Anybody else that's caught your eye?
Yeah, that Sammy Boller guy, he's pretty good.
Yeah.
I don't know all that thing.
Yeah. I'll tell you what really impressed me was there's a number of videos online of Misha Mansour, showing how he puts together his tracks, and more than just the guitar playing, his knowledge of programming drums and recording and seeing the big picture. Obviously, he's doing some pretty revolutionary guitar stuff, but as an overall musician, I was really impressed with him. Really, really, really knocked me out. And he's also involved in some good technology, and he's involved with that company Get Good Drums, which have a really good. He's got some good software things happening. They now have an IR loader that's really, really good. Pete Thorne turned me onto it, so he's impressed me quite a bit. Let's see who else of the newer guys. There's a group called Ginger, which is they're actually they're from not Russia, but somewhere around there. But the guitar player and the bass player are doing some incredible things, polyrhythmic, a lot of tapping things. So they impressed the hell out of me as well. Got to give me a second because I got to get my wall wart from my computer. Otherwise,
you're right, man. You're right. Yeah.
Okay. Give me 1 second.
You cool, man. I need the one of me and Sammy. There we go. Sammy, I mentioned a player to you when we were hanging out in Germany, and you weren't aware of him. He's really well known in Australia, called Brett Garsed. And that was a turning point for me. He played for an artist called John Farnham, who is quite possibly one of the best singers in the world.
Wow. Man.
Yeah. He was just an institution over here. You know of Tommy Emmanuel, right? Everyone knows Tommy Emmanuel.
I've seen him several times.
Yeah.
I love him.
Yeah.
He's incredible.
So
I'm sure Steve digs him too.
Yeah. So
awesome. He's big over here.
He was really big in Australia for a long time, like in the late 80s, early 90s. But he almost became a bit of a variety show guest judge kind of thing. And I don't think Australia really appreciated how special he was until he moved overseas. But this Brett Garsed guy that I mentioned, Brett, when I was learning to play, this was my moment where I was learning to play the Shadows, because it was simple single note stuff, and that's good for a 12-year-old, but then you need to progress from that. And a John Farnham concert came on TV, And Brett Garsed took this solo, this extended solo with the tapping and the legato, and he's very Alan Holdsworth inspired. And that absolutely blew my mind. And I think that was the moment for me where I thought, I need to learn some of that stuff. I actually, Brett got back to me yesterday. He's going to come onto the show. I haven't locked in a time with him. I've got to exchange a couple of emails, but be really excited to have him on and just find out whether all that came for him.
Congrats, man. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I need to check him out still. But yeah, I'd love if he's on the show. I'll definitely be watching that. That's so cool.
So there's two distinct styles of playing that he does. When he plays for John Farnham, he usually plays slide guitar solos, and they are the most melodically beautiful thing. Steve, we're talking about Brett Garsed here. I'm not sure if you know who Brett is. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, with Farnham, he's playing beautiful, almost like sung melodies that just fit the song, you know. But when he plays just himself, it's very Holdsworth inspired, I guess. Just all the legato, and I think he's into 4-note per string scales for his runs. It's very Sean Lane.
That is kind of like Holdsworth, yeah. That's cool.
Yeah, and with quite the reach, you know. I mean, speaking of picking, a lot of it comes down to your pick, doesn't it? And that's where I said, Sammy sent me a little bag of picks because I was having trouble finding a good stiff pick that would hold its shape. What are you using these days, Steve? Have you always used the same thing, or have you come and go?
I use a different pick for acoustic guitar than I do for electric. Let's see, where's my picks about? Hold on 1 second.
Oh.
Yeah. Hold on one.
You're right. I'll cut away from that one. I thought he was leaning down to show us the pics, but they're behind the computer. I get it. Sorry. I thought you were leaning down to show us where the pics were. It's like,
no, so I use these, this is I'm with Dunlop picks, and this is their wedge, what they call their wedge shape.
Cool.
And it's a little bit bigger and pointier than their standard pick, and it's a 1.0 millimeter.
Yep.
And I just this is really good for alternate picking, and I find that these don't. I can literally go through, maybe 2 or 3 picks for a whole show, whereas I used to, just like slice through picks and stuff. So I've been using these, 10 years or so now. And,
cool.
But for acoustic guitar, I use a lighter pick because more strumming, you kind of want to get the sound of the strum as opposed to the impact.
Yeah. Sammy, the ones that you sent me, mate, they're Dunlops as well, aren't they?
Yeah, I use Dunlop picks too, man. Mine are, I think it's just extra heavy celluloid. I'm not sure about the shape, but I think it's just their standard shape or whatever. But
yep.
Yeah. I'm with Steve though. I think when you're playing acoustic, especially for recording, man, it's good to have a little bit of a lighter pick.
Yeah.
It's nice to have it give a little bit, Yep. But I don't know. I'm one of those guys where it's like I like consistency, So it's like I've been using those extra heavy ones for so long, I don't know. When I find something I like, I try to stick with it, especially something like that where it's like
absolutely.
Yeah. It's funny. I used to use bright green Jim Dunlop riffs for good 20 years or so, and they had a slight bit of flex in them. I was using the 88s, I think they were. And it wasn't until I went to NAMM a couple of years ago and I was walking along and I bumped into Andy James. I don't know if you guys have seen Andy James on Instagram. He's insanely good.
He's great.
Yeah.
He's great.
And I just stopped and went, Andy James, how you doing, man? And I just said to him, your picking is just insane. And he sort of leaned over in his English accent and said, I've got a secret, and pulled out this pick out of his pocket. I've got it still here somewhere. And that put me onto the heavy pick. And I went home and I tried playing with that and thought, wow, this is where it's at. Now, if I use one that does have any flex in it whatsoever, it feels like I'm trying to write with a rubber pen.
Right.
You guys, do you find the same thing? It's just, yeah.
Mm. Yeah, I don't like to be, especially if you're playing lead, man. I don't like it to be bending around at all. I think it's better if it's a little stiff,
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a lot of people go for the little jazz stubbies and the like, but
can't do it.
No, I'm the same. I'm the same.
I don't like them either, man. Yeah, I don't like those either.
Yeah, man, I played with a coin for years because I was a Brian May impersonator for about 5 years in an international
That's
touring
sweet. Nice.
Queen tribute show, and I had to get used to doing that. And you can adjust. At first, it was awkward, but that Brian May sound, a lot of that is the fact that he's got metal on metal with a serrated edge, and it just has that chirp at the front end of each note. It's really cool. Any new your Nags guitars there, Steve? They look absolutely beautiful, man. How long have you been playing those?
I think it's 8 years now, I believe.
Yeah.
And I back in the day, I had the Hamer guitar line, and and one of the distributors in Europe for Hamer was a guy named Peter Wolf, and we maintained a friendship all those years, and even after I left the company, and I hadn't really been looking. I had kind of, once I reconvened with Billy Idol, I kind of was playing Les Pauls and kind of staying away from the whammy bar guitars, staying away from the chorus pedals and the whammy bar guitars. I'd reached my quota in the 80s. I wasn't allowed to use those anymore. So, so I was playing Les Pauls, and then I had one PRS guitar that I really loved, a McCarty. And I had toured a lot with Billy Idol with that guitar, and I had a couple of guitar companies that approached me about doing a signature guitar, but they were very adamant that we have a budget guitar, Asian-made guitar, and I had a bad experience with that with Washburn, where I had approved an American-made guitar, a high-end guitar that I was playing, and didn't know that there was a lower Korean-made guitar going out, and I started to get this is before the internet, started to get mail to management saying, this guitar is, I bought this guitar because you play it and it fell apart and people weren't happy with it. I said, what guitar is this? Yeah. I found out that there was a lower price point guitar that I wouldn't have played. Yeah. So when these companies started talking about that, I said, look, I'm not gonna put my name on something that I wouldn't get up and play. Yeah. And so Peter called me and said, hey, remember, your PRS guitar is made by this guy Joe Nags. He ran the custom shop at PRS, and he has a new guitar company. We'd like to send you a couple of guitars, and they sent me a couple. They were, beautiful instruments, but weren't right for me. I like a thicker body, like a single cutaway Gibson style guitar. I said, I like this, and I like the Gibson angled headstock because I like that tension against the smaller string scale length. That's how you make up for the yada yada yada. Yep. And he said, we'll make you anything you want. What? And I went, really? Anything? And they said, yeah. So I realized I had like a complete guitar factory at my beck and call, and we went through a couple of revisions, and I love the fact that it's an all American made guitar. It is, it's not an inexpensive guitar, but I believe it's a guitar that'll get passed down from generations the way those classic instruments would, and they're just I feel good about supporting an American company. There's only about 15 guys that work there. They're really, really great guys, and every step of the way that anytime I've asked for something different, it's never, I don't know if we could, they're like, okay, no problem. And there's a guy named Lucas who's this mad scientist at Nags, and he built me a guitar with a built-in Raygun in it, and he designed this. It's just immaculate the way that every guitar that I get from them is just like immaculate, and they play so well, and I'm proud to be behind a company that's just now kind of becoming well known, and I feel like they're family at this point.
Awesome. Now you mentioned Hamer, and I actually have a Hamer that I've had since 91. You might be able to see it behind me. This is really hard because it's all backwards. It's that one right there. That's not lining up for what you guys are seeing. You're seeing me up there, but that's a Hamer. Now, I don't even know if I'm saying it right. Is it called a chaparral or a chaparral?
Yeah, chaparral.
Chaparral, yeah.
Chap-
So that was chaparral elite with Sustainiac. And I actually pulled the Sustainiac out because it's the old model that went through so much batteries. It had a compartment in the back for 2 9-volts. Yeah. I'd get about an hour out of that before it would go flat, and then my whole guitar would go dead. But I believe the new model is a lot more efficient on batteries, and I'm looking forward to putting one back in. Have you played around with sustainers and things in your guitars before?
I don't know. Sammy, have you ever used that?
I haven't done much with sustainers, man. I've always wanted to get like a Fernandez sustainer and put it in something, but I've never pulled the trigger on it, man. I don't know. You were saying it was what's the model of sustainer that was in that? Was it a Fernandez sustainer?
No. The original was
a Hamer.
No, there was a company called Sustainiac.
Okay.
They made the original one.
Okay.
Yeah. And I still think the best. It's fantastic, even just to get controlled feedback at a low volume. Right. It was a big part of my style back in the 90s, and I kind of really miss it. So when I get a bit more financial, I hope to get one installed back in there. But just to flick a switch, and you can actually choose between the fundamental note,
harmonic,
harmonic,
different harmonics,
or a blend of the two, and that's just a beautiful sound, man.
Yeah, you know who put that chaparral on the map was Vernon Reed. Played a chaparral.
Mine's exactly the same as his.
No,
yeah, exactly the same as his. Yeah. Mine used to be black, but I got bored one Christmas and stripped it back to the bare mahogany, and loved it ever since.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Steve, the Raygun thing. Where did that come from, man? Like with Rebel Yell, I know you've got that effect in there, but that wasn't a Raygun at the time, was it? Was that PCM 42s or something you used to get that?
PCM 41.
41.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And the story behind that was, when we recorded Rebel Yell, we knew that, okay, this is going to be the lead-off track on the record. It was no mystery to us that we had a winner. We all actually, that song was recorded 3 times.
Really?
Wow. And because we were locked away in Electric Lady Studios, Hendrix Studio, to do that record, and we had finally found an incredible drummer, Tommy Price, and all of the backing tracks were sounding great, and Billy and I. On the first record, the last song to be recorded was White Wedding, so that was kind of the level that we had to achieve. That was going to be the starting point. So we wrote Rebel Yell together, and we started recording it, and we got the backing track, and he got a guide vocal, and we went, this is great. This, it's really going to be good. Came time to do the guitar solo, and I said, this has to be more than just a guitar solo. Can't be just a bunch of notes. And I said, the way I designed the solo is I wanted it to start with Chuck Berry, very rock and roll, and then go to outer space. So I brought in the Billy Cobham record with Tommy Boller on guitar, and there's Quadrant 4 is one of the tracks. And on that,
oh wow, I'd love that.
Right? And so in that, he uses the Echoplex, and it takes over and does that kind of like oscillation thing. And I played it for our producer and engineer. I said, we need something as cool as that. Mm-hmm. And I said, I don't want to rip that off, but we need the guitar to have some effect where it just goes, beyond just notes. And, we kind of like cut the solo. We're thinking about it. And at the time, I used to kind of like collect toy robots, and there was a store in New York that sold these kind of old tin toys and stuff like that. And I had a toy robot, toy Raygun, and I said, it'd be great if I could kind of replicate that. So it was just like a little bit of, hunting around with my lexicon, and figured that the modulation, if I took the note away and just had the modulation and had it on a foot switch, I could hit a harmonic, and it would just go into this kind of like fluttering modulation thing. So that's kind of how we cut the solo. But then what I realized was I had to dedicate, the lexicon didn't have presets. And I was using it for all these other delay things, and I'd have little pencil marks on there. There was a song called Shooting Stars on the first record that had a triplet delay, so I had to get that. I had, no presets, and I said I didn't want to dedicate the unit to this one little thing that in the course of this show was only going to happen for 2 seconds.
Absolutely.
And I started to I was sitting at home and I'm playing with this toy Raygun, watching I don't know, I Love Lucy or something, and had a little practice amp, and I started to hear the Raygun come through the pickups of the guitar. And then I went, oh, wow, if I vary it, so I opened it up because it would only go at one speed, and I saw that there was little resistors in there. So I wonder, potentiometer is just a variable resistor. Wonder if I replace. So I got little alligator clips out, and I'm poking around on the circuit, and lo and behold, I found the spot where I could put this potentiometer in it, and that's basically the story of the Raygun.
Cool, very cool.
So cool.
So you mentioned playing around with all the resistors and everything. So you're pretty up on your electronics. I'm definitely not.
I just hunt and peck.
Yeah. Cool.
But there was a book that came out when I was about 13 or 14, Electronic Projects for Musicians.
Uh-huh.
I still have this book with my handwritten notes in it, and it was done by Craig Anderton, who still does, he's still active in the music business. Yep. And I built a couple of projects from that book. I learned everything I know about pedals, and I was actually at one point offered a job at Electro Harmonics as a product tester, and
cool.
just at the same time. Yeah, just at the same time as I got my gig with Billy Idol. So I was like, oh, well, I think I'll go do the Billy Idol thing. But everything I learned was from that book.
That's awesome. I really appreciate, there was one high school teacher for me that knew that I was reading the back of the guitar magazines in class and reading articles by Craig Anderson and stuff. Eddie Leon, I actually bumped into him not that long ago, walking down the street, and he recognized me straight away, and the first thing he said is, "You still playing guitar?" Yes. But yeah, I can remember him taking my magazines off me. Hey, you're not listening. And then he actually came back. He saw what page I was on. He goes, "Do you understand all this?" I'm like, yeah. And he goes, "You just keep reading that. That's just way ahead of what I'm teaching right here." So I really,
that's awesome.
Yeah, that's one of those good teachers that, so this isn't by the rule book, but you're on the right path. Steve, I wanted to ask you about Top Gun. You've probably been asked this a million times, but when that came your way, did Harold Faltermeyer have the complete the melody and everything for you?
Yeah.
You just and then you just let you have a bit of a go for it in the solo, etc.
Yeah. So this is a great example when I tell musicians that you never know. Sometimes the littlest things can end up being very important to you as a player. Not necessarily, recording or making money or becoming well known, but also you'll stumble upon something that'll open up a whole door to your approach on music, or you maybe were struggling on how to do something, and then suddenly something out of the blue helps you overcome that obstacle. But Harold was on the third Billy Idol record, Whiplash Smile. Harold was brought in as a keyboard player.
Cool.
Because he was friends with Keith Forsey. Both of them were in Germany with Giorgio Moroder. And so Harold's working on the tracks, and he pulls me aside and says, "Hey, I'm doing the score for this movie, Top Gun, starring this new actor, Tom Cruise. I'll show you some." And I think Risky Business was the only thing he had done up until then.
Yeah.
So he had the Betamax, and put the Betamax on and showed me some of the footage. And at that time, the aerial footage, the flight scenes, they were like groundbreaking at the time. Now they're not. But he said, "I have this theme. And would you like to play guitar on it?" So at the end of the day, I remember it was on a weekend. It might have been a Saturday. We had finished at about 10 o'clock with the Billy Idol stuff, and Harold put up the multi-track for Top Gun and played it for me and had this basic, I think it was like a Rockman guitar playing the melody. And I kind of said, oh, yeah, I can do that. And, we tackled it. And I said, yeah, but it's got to have more, it was very straight, no finesse or anything like that. And I said, well, we got to make this, sound like Wagner or something, But fortunately, my guitars and gear setup were already from the Billy Idol thing. So we already had a great guitar sound ready to go. So we didn't have to mess around with that. It was just a matter of capturing that melody. And then the solo was pretty much, I was let, he said, do whatever you want in the solo. And we kind of constructed something for it. And I think the whole session probably took a couple of hours. And then I kind of forgot about it. And then the movie came out, and then we won a Grammy for it. And I always tell people that you just never know, something that took me 2 hours to do and was an afterthought at the end of a session became this very important thing in my career. So I always tell people to, always say yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Say yes.
Yeah.
I love that story. That's amazing. God,
it's just,
that's so cool.
And I was, Harold is just such a positive thinking guy that he every time I play the melody or something, he would get on the talk back. And because this is before guitar players would be in the control room. We'd be on headphones and, this is great. He just kept me pumped about it. And I was like, I don't know, this is great, And then when he called me from Germany to say we had been nominated for a Grammy, he said, we're going to win this fucking thing. And I went, no, we're not going to win a Grammy. He said, I'm telling you, we're going to win. Awesome. He's just a positive guy, It's just, and from what I understand is that my original guitar track is being used in the sequel to the movie, which is
cool,
being filmed. Yeah.
So you said Harold played keyboards on Whiplash Smile, and forgive me for not knowing what songs are on what albums from your discography, but stuff like "Forgot to Be Your Lover" with all those that quantized 16th note or 8th note bass, was that all him?
Probably. I mean, if it involved a drum machine, it's Keith Forsey.
Okay.
Because Keith also was very hip. These guys were they would be, it used to be that these records were done analog, so you'd have a SMPTE code to lock up your tape machines. You have two 24-track tape machines because you'd get a good drum take and put that tape away because you didn't want to degrade it. So they were already used to locking up machines, so they would lock up early sequencers to that same SMPTE code. And then I specifically remember with Harold, he was doing a sequence-based thing, and it sounded fine to me. And he kept saying, it's behind. And they'd literally rock the 24-track tape and mark where the kick drum was with a pencil, and then track offset the sequence to make sure that it lined up perfectly with the kick drum.
Wow.
They were just ahead of the curve as far as getting things tight. Because a lot of people were trying to use sequencers, and it wasn't until Pro Tools that it really became an easy thing to do. But these guys really had figured out how to get things tight. And those Donna Summers records, all that Giorgio Moroder, I Feel Love, if you listen back to that stuff, it's really spot on and tight. And
absolutely,
that's how they were doing it.
Yeah.
They were manually marking where the beats were on the analog tape.
Yeah. No, even just listening to the Top Gun theme, and that's a drum machine going through a delay to get that width. I picked that up the other day. It was just like, and something so simple these days. You Pro Tools, put it in, hit the button, it syncs. It wasn't that easy back then, was it? You guys had to come up with some really inventive stuff to make things work.
Yeah, and it couldn't be replicated again. I mean, that was the one thing that was really difficult, because if you get a great track and then you wanted to punch in, let's say a week later or something, it was really hard to. I mean, that's the one thing about plugins now and digital recording, you can go back and replicate the sound, but we couldn't do that back then.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's funny, like I said, I'm doing a live chat with Louis Shelton later on, and he's done a lot of work with the guys from Toto and the Boz Skaggs, all that kind of stuff. And he was telling me there was one particular record that he was working on way back when, and the tape machine just went haywire, and one reel was spinning the other, and just tapes flying in the air, and they'd spent all night recording, and just an absolute disaster. And even just punch-ins, having to be, you sure you got that at the right spot? There's not the non-destructive editing or recording like we have today. So you had to be really on top of your game, I guess, huh?
Well, that was the thing with Billy Idol, because he always wanted to keep my first guitar track, my first solo pass. And I would always be like, well, I can make it better. I can do this. Yeah. But you had to really think about it, because you were punching in on that track. Mm-hmm. So you better be damn sure you could make it better, because you're going to lose the one that you had just done. And invariably, he'd always make me wait, come back to the song. Let's move on.
Sure.
Come back to it, and then listen to it with fresh ears. And then if you still don't like it, okay, then we can punch in. But just I was always a little too close to it and not seeing it the way maybe that Billy would see it or Keith would see it. And 9 times out of 10, they were correct.
Cool.
That's something I've learned from doing sessions too, man. It's like, it's usually the first or second, especially on solos. It's usually the first or second. Don't overthink it. Come back to it. Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Hey guys, I'm going to have to shove off here.
You're right, man. You said you only had 45 to, and we've stretched you right out. So I really do thank you for your time, Steve, and Sammy. I'm going to round things up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Man, Sammy, thank you. Steve, thank you. Thanks to everybody that tuned in. Give everybody a round of applause. You're not going to hear this, but either of you guys, anytime you want to come and have a chat with me, I'd love to have you on again. It's
it's great to see Sammy looking healthy and reconnect, and we'll.
It's great to see, man.
Yeah, he's one of my favorite guitar players. I'm not just saying that, but
likewise, man.
It's really he's as humble as can be, because he's got this shit to back it up.
yeah. He's one of the nicest guys you ever meet too. No, I love Sammy. Got all the time in the world for him. Thanks, guys, and thank you everyone that tuned in. See you soon.
Bye.